The beneficial liquidity plan is the money that families are able to access immediately when their loved one passes away. It's part of the inheritance, so it's money that's already being passed on. But the reason they need it, and this is interesting, that most people don't fully understand what happens when a loved one passes away. There's no money immediately available for the family. People have done all this planning, they're leaving this inheritance, right? But what most people fail to realize is that money is not going to be available for 30, 45, 60, 90 days or longer. So the family's stuck paying a lot of expenses out of pocket, hoping to get reimbursed once the estate is settled. So if we've done proper planning, we've normally set those bank accounts up with transfer on death or payable on death, is how we typically recommend for non-beneficiary accounts. That helps the family avoid probate, but it actually requires a death certificate before they can start the process of accessing that money. So it does speed it up, but it's still typically a couple weeks before they can access that money, even in a bank account, even if it's set up with transfer or payable on death. Yeah, the national average is 2 to 3 weeks, but a lot of states are 4 to 8 weeks. Some states are even close to 6 months, just depending. And that's assuming the known cause of death. That's assuming that there's not an accident or some other issue that might delay that. But even if it's 2 to 3 weeks, you need that death certificate, like we said, before you can access the bank accounts if you were set up as transfer on death or payable on death. Life insurance requires a death certificate and a claims process. By the way, I love life insurance. Like life insurance is an amazing tool and way to pass wealth and to do a lot of really neat things that only life insurance can do. But the one thing traditional life insurance doesn't do is pay out those claims immediately to those family members that are beneficiaries because it needs a death certificate and a claims process. Same for annuities. You know how I love annuities. They do a lot of amazing things, but they require a death certificate and a claims process. A lot of people will bring up power of attorney. My son or daughter or my executor's financial power of attorney, which we highly recommend, by the way, that you have a financial power of attorney in place. But what I didn't realize until I really started focusing on this part of the industry was that the power of attorney dies when you die. It ceases to exist when you die and is no longer valid. So it does a lot of great things while you're alive, but doesn't work to give your family access to money when you pass away. Now, same thing's true with like a living trust, great estate planning tool. And if your son or daughter or family member is the successor trustee, they need a death certificate. And it's a process with the attorney to become the successor trustee to start accessing that money. So the moral of the story is that the majority of the time, the money that somebody thinks their family's going to be able to use to cover all the immediate expenses when they pass away, unfortunately isn't available to the family when they need it, which is one of the reasons we're so passionate about this solution, is because we know that people care. We know they think that family can get to money, but the reality of it is they simply can't access the money. Well, I wish I could tell you I created something extremely complicated or brilliant, but it's actually very simple. We don't require a death certificate to pay out the money, the full amount to the family. We have a patent pending on our death claims process, but I'm going to give you the simple version. In this country, whether you're being buried or cremated, immediately after you pass away, you end up in front of a licensed funeral director. That's the first place you go. Funeral director goes, "Yep, Phil's dead." And I know I'm kind of making light of that, but it's that simple. Last year, we paid over 68,000 claims without a death certificate. The year before that was over 66,000. This is what we do. We are a claims company that we pay. Again, we're probably going to hit 70,000 claims this year without a death certificate. I love that question. It's actually easier to tell you who doesn't need it. So here's who does not need a beneficiary liquidity plan. Families or people that don't have any money. They don't have any inheritance that they're leaving. We don't create inheritance. We simply make a small part of the inheritance liquid. So if somebody doesn't already have monies that they're leaving as an inheritance, I can't help them with our solution. There may be other things that they could do for their family, but the beneficiary liquidity plan is not something for people that don't have any monies at all. Okay, that's the first type of person. The second type of person that doesn't need a beneficiary liquidity plan, they don't like their beneficiaries. I've had people go, "Phil, I'll be dead. What do I care? They can just figure it out." That is okay if that's their opinion. It's their money, it's their family. If they want to make it hard, they can. But what we found over the last 10 years of doing this is that the majority of the time, people are leaving in some sort of inheritance, or they hope to. And the majority of the time, they care about their family and they don't want to be a burden. But they simply didn't realize that the money wouldn't be available. And that's why we're so passionate. And what clients love about what we do is that it doesn't cost anything to fix the problem. So let me explain what I mean by that is we're not going to buy more inheritance for the family. We're not going to give them any more or any less than what they're already going to get if you do nothing. So for easy math for me, let's just say it's $1 million. And I know it's a big number, but just it's easy math. Your family's going to inherit $1 million whether you fix the problem or not. What my job is to help people determine what's the minimum dollar amount that we think their family's going to need access to for the first 30, 45, 60, 90 days while their estate is in a vacuum period. What's the minimum they're going to need? And then where are we going to allocate it from? And so you're not buying more. You're simply reallocating dollars somewhere in the inheritance from your left pocket to your right pocket into the beneficiary liquidity plan. So that now, on one of the worst days of your family's life, the day you pass away, we at least eliminated the immediate financial burden by giving them access to money they were ultimately going to inherit anyways. If they had to wait for the death certificate, then file a claim, and they wait for the money, there are bills due immediately. And if anybody's been to a funeral home recently, I hope you haven't, but if you've been to a funeral home recently, they typically have a sign right out there that says payment due when services are rendered. The funeral home expects payment before or at the time of services, which makes sense. If they cremate you, you haven't paid, there's not a lot of recourse there, right? So they need payment up front. There's other bills, attorneys, taxes, medical bills. The bank doesn't care that you died. The mortgage payments still due. The car payments still due. And here's one that really starts that, unless they've lived it, pensions freeze, even with spousal continuation, until you get a death certificate and you file the claim. You'll get made whole for payments missed, but payments might not come in for a couple months. Social Security will stop until you do the spousal conversion. So we even do this planning for spouses because a lot of income, there's 30, 45, 60, 90 days where the normal money might not be flowing in. The bank doesn't care. The bank wants to get paid. The lenders want to get paid. There's expenses that the families have that we want to make sure is covered. And so we love talking about this because when families care and they're leaving some sort of inheritance, the fact that they don't have to make premium payments where they're not buying extra, right? Like it's the same money they've already planned on leaving. It's probably the same money that somewhere in their mind, they were like, if I died tomorrow, this is the money I'd want my family to use. But they just don't know that their family won't actually be able to use the money in their current plan. So we just need to reallocate it into the beneficiary liquidity plan through our patented claims process where we don't require the death certificate to pay that out tax-free immediately to the named beneficiary or beneficiaries, just to eliminate the immediate financial burden while the rest of the state is settled properly. Yes, so right now it earns 3.25% interest tax deferred, which is equivalent to approximately a 5% taxable rate of return. But then most importantly, it passes tax-free. But even if we didn't earn any interest, the fact that our family can access the money immediately without a death certificate and it's protected and it goes to the beneficiaries that you want it to go to, and it's a super easy process. The whole conversation takes 5 to 10 minutes. You need to know who your beneficiary is going to be and maybe who your executor is, where we want to move the money from. Your team can help them determine what's the minimum that we think is going to be the right dollar amount for them. But there's no health questions. There's no underwriting or anything like that. The only kick out is you can't be 91. We understand that there's other investment vehicles that can earn potentially more rate of return. That's why we really try to help families determine what's the minimum. You know, the average expenses for a family, by the way, is right around $20,000, $25,000 when you cover funeral, other bills, celebration of life, other things that need to be done to settle the estate. It's anywhere between $20,000 to $25,000 on average. And that's not taking into consideration if you have rental properties or vacation homes, or you want to fly your family in from other parts of the country. That's just basic that most families need to allocate $20,000 to $25,000. We can do up to $150,000, but for a lot of families, that would be unnecessary to put that much in. And that's why we try to work with families to determine what is the right number. And that's going to be a little bit different for everybody. It's not assigned to any particular funeral home. It's wherever your family ultimately decides to take you when you pass away. They take our claim form to any funeral home in the country. It doesn't even have to be Colorado or anywhere around. It could be New York, Florida, doesn't matter. That funeral home is going to see that you have a beneficiary liquidity plan. They're actually going to be happy because one of the most difficult parts of their job is asking for monies from families that don't have access to any. So the fact that they know that your family now has access to money, this is going to be a good experience for everybody. They're going to notify us that you passed away. We're going to pay that funeral bill immediately and simultaneously direct deposit the rest of the funds into your beneficiary's checking account. Last year, we paid 99% of our claims in less than 48 hours. Anything that was outside of 48 hours could have been a holiday weekend where financial institutions were closed on a Monday. As long as the banks are open, we're depositing that money, same day or next day to those beneficiaries. We created a 5-question survey that you have in the office there that we recommend them just taking 1 to 2 minutes to check 5 boxes. That's it. It'll get their mind just nicely thinking about, okay, what do I want, without getting too deep and thinking about dying or any of those things that most of us don't want to talk about. Just by checking these 5 boxes on our beneficiary liquidity plan survey, it'll help their financial advisor in the office there look at that as determining, okay, are we ready to have a conversation about this? Where are we in this process? But we've made it simple. And then if you do want to move forward, again, we determine what's the minimum you need. And then we help you decide where we want to allocate it from, so you're not having to buy more inheritance for your family to solve the problem. On the worst day of your family's life, the day you pass away, eliminating that immediate financial burden by giving them access to money they were ultimately going to inherit anyways, but by removing the death certificate requirement, we're able to give them access in 24 to 48 hours. And it really is the final piece to that legacy plan, that financial plan that we're leaving for the family. And the kids or the family is going to be like, wow, mom and dad really thought of everything. If you're 90 or younger, no health questions, theoretically, you could be in a nursing home. We don't ask any questions like that. It's who are your beneficiaries? Where are we going to allocate the money from? And it can all be done virtually, digitally in the office. We make it very simple. We really tried to make it as easy as possible. We thought about it because, I came from my first 20 years in the industry was on the investment and insurance side. And we kept seeing these statistics that there's trillions of dollars transferring hands from one generation to the next. But then I read another statistic. So I got excited. I was saying, okay, there's all this money transferring. But one statistic I read was less than 10% of families, less than 10%, actually have access to any of the inheritance immediately when their loved one passes away. That meant 90% were stuck coming out of pocket, and it was causing arguments, disagreements amongst loved ones. When someone passes away, it's emotional. We didn't want to add the financial burden on top of that. So we set out to determine how can we create immediate access to money without the families having to buy more inheritance, and then giving them that tax-free benefit where it is a true disbursement of the inheritance. This is your money that they're getting immediate access to, but our patent pending death claims process with the funeral homes is how we can release that money immediately without you having to buy extra or more inheritance, just the reallocating of funds you've already earmarked for your family. We've seen, we've all heard the stories of, someone going back to grandma's house and stealing the silverware and the rugs, during the wake, and or my brother paid for the funeral and now he's wanting money back from me, but he's got a better job. He should just pay for it. We know that's not what mom and dad wanted. It eliminates that, and it makes sure the money's there when the family needs it. This isn't how we pass the wealth, right? Like the rest of the estate gets passed the regular way. We're just carving out this little piece that the family's going to need immediately for that 30, 45, 60, 90 days. That's the problem we're solving, is that immediate need, while the rest of the estate and the inheritance can be settled without putting the strain and burden primarily on the executor, who gets stuck with this burden, a legal obligation of solving this. Well, we control all the distribution. We only work with select advisors that actually care about their families and the clients that they serve that want to solve this problem. It's not something that everybody has access to. We want to make sure that people are implementing it the right way into their business. And obviously your organization's one I've had a long relationship with, and